October 27, 1879. A single piece of carbonized thread glows for 13.5 hours in a New Jersey laboratory. That moment cost Thomas Edison $50,000, about $1.5 million today, in failed experiments. But it creates a $50 million industry overnight. And here's what nobody tells you. Edison didn't invent the light bulb. 23 inventors before him already had working prototypes. So how did Edison's patent US 2223898A become the most valuable patent of the 19th century? The answer involves corporate warfare, a stolen design accusation, and a legal loophole that changed patent law forever. Before we dive into the patent that changed everything, you need to understand what the world looked like in 1879. Imagine living in a reality where the sun dictates your entire existence. When darkness falls at 5 p.m. in winter, your productivity doesn't just decrease, it stops. Factories shut down. Students can't study. Surgery becomes nearly impossible. The only light sources are gas lamps that leak toxic fumes, candles that cause thousands of house fires annually, and whale oil lamps that literally drove species to near extinction. This wasn't just inconvenient. It was a civilization-level bottleneck. New York City in 1879 had 300,000 gas street lamps. Each one required a lamplighter to manually ignite it every evening. The gas companies had a complete monopoly on urban lighting, and they knew it. They charged whatever they wanted. A single gas lamp cost the equivalent of $200 per year to operate. For context, the average worker made $500 annually. Lighting your home adequately could consume 40% of your income. But here's the kicker. The gas companies didn't just control lighting, they controlled time itself. When they decided to raise prices or limit supply, entire cities would plunge into darkness. It was the ultimate infrastructure hostage situation. And the scientific community? They'd been trying to crack electric lighting for 78 years. In 1801, British inventor Humphrey Davy created the first electric arc lamp. It was brilliant, literally, producing light equivalent to 2,000 candles. It was also completely impractical. The light was so intense it could blind you. It consumed enormous amounts of electricity. It lasted only a few hours before burning out, and it cost a fortune to operate. Over the next 8 decades, 23 different inventors patented various versions of incandescent and arc lamps. Joseph Swan in England, Heinrich Goebel in Germany, Moses Farmer in America. Each solved part of the puzzle, but nobody could make it commercially viable. The core problem was simple but brutal. They couldn't find a filament that would glow brightly without burning up instantly. Think about what happens when you heat metal. It glows, yes, but it also oxidizes and disintegrates. Early inventors tried platinum because it had a high melting point. Too expensive and still burned out. They tried carbon rods. Too thick, created uneven light, died quickly. They tried vacuum bulbs to prevent oxidation. The vacuums weren't strong enough. Air leaked in, filaments died. By 1878, the world's brightest minds had essentially concluded that electric home lighting might be theoretically possible, but practically impossible. Enter Thomas Edison. And here's where the story gets interesting, because Edison in 1878 was not the beloved inventor of American mythology. He was a 31-year-old entrepreneur with a controversial reputation. He'd made a fortune improving telegraphs and inventing the phonograph, but he was also known for aggressive business tactics and taking credit for his employees' innovations. When Edison announced in September 1878 that he would solve electric lighting within 6 weeks, the scientific community laughed. The gas company stocks didn't laugh. They immediately dropped 12% because investors knew something the scientists didn't. Edison wasn't just an inventor. He was a system builder. Most inventors were trying to create a better light bulb. Edison was designing an entire electrical grid. While his competitors focused on the bulb itself, Edison was simultaneously developing generators, voltage regulators, wiring systems, sockets, switches, and even the meter to measure electricity consumption. He understood that a light bulb without an infrastructure to power it was worthless. But he also knew he needed that perfect bulb first, or investors wouldn't fund the infrastructure. So he did something radical. He lied about how close he was to success to secure funding, then used that funding to actually achieve the success. It was either brilliant entrepreneurship or spectacular fraud, depending on your perspective. Edison's Menlo Park laboratory in New Jersey became a 24-hour innovation factory. He assembled a team of the best experimenters money could buy. Francis Upton, a Princeton-educated mathematician. Charles Batchelor, a master mechanic from Britain. John Crucy, a Swiss clockmaker with supernatural precision. And dozens of other specialists. This wasn't a lone genius in a workshop. This was America's first true R&D laboratory, operating like a corporation. Edison's method was exhaustive, systematic, and expensive. He tested over 3,000 different materials for filaments. Coconut hair, fishing line, cork, flax, hickory, baywood, cedar, rosewood, boxwood, the beard hair of one of his employees according to laboratory notes. Bamboo from Japan, fiber from palms, thread from his wife's sewing kit. The breakthrough came from an accident involving that sewing thread. On October 21, 1879, laboratory assistant William Hammer was carbonizing cotton thread for a completely different experiment. Edison noticed the carbonized thread had interesting properties. It was strong but flexible, highly resistant, could be made extremely thin. Edison immediately ordered it to be tested as a filament. The first test lasted 13.5 hours before burning out. That doesn't sound impressive until you realize the previous record was about 40 minutes. Edison had just increased light bulb lifespan by 2,000%. Within days, they optimized the process and got bulbs lasting 40 hours. Within weeks, 100 hours. The problem that had stumped civilization for 8 decades was suddenly solvable. But here's what makes this moment fascinating from a patent perspective. Edison hadn't actually invented anything new. Carbon filaments had been tried before. Vacuum bulbs existed. Cotton thread was obviously not a novel material. What Edison had discovered was a specific combination and process. He found that if you carbonized the thread at exactly the right temperature, shaped it into a horseshoe configuration, placed it in a vacuum of specific quality, and powered it with a precise voltage, you got a practical light bulb. This wasn't invention in the traditional sense. It was optimization. And that's exactly what made patent US 223898A so legally vulnerable and simultaneously so valuable. Edison filed the patent application on November 4, 1879, just 2 weeks after the successful test. The patent was titled Electric Lamp, and it's a masterpiece of strategic legal writing. Edison's lawyer framed the patent not as a specific device, but as a method. The key claim wasn't a light bulb with a cotton thread filament, but rather a carbon filament of high resistance in a sealed glass bulb. This subtle distinction was genius. By claiming the method rather than the specific material, Edison could defend against anyone using any carbon-based filament in a high-resistance configuration. The patent was broad enough to be defensible but specific enough to be approvable. The Patent Office granted patent US 223898A on January 27, 1880. The official patent document describes a carbon filament lamp with several specific innovations. First, the filament's high resistance, which allowed multiple bulbs to be connected in parallel on the same circuit. Previous designs required series circuits where one bulb failure killed the entire system. Second, the horseshoe shape that distributed heat evenly and prevented hotspots that caused early failure. Third, the improved vacuum seal that prevented oxidation. Fourth, the platinum wire connections that could withstand repeated heating and cooling. These weren't dramatic individual innovations, but together they transformed the light bulb from a laboratory curiosity into a commercial product. Edison immediately began public demonstrations. On New Year's Eve 1879, he illuminated his entire Menlo Park laboratory and invited the public. 3,000 people showed up. Newspaper reporters called it a miracle. The New York Herald wrote that Edison had effectively conquered darkness. Investors poured money into the Edison Electric Light Company. Within months, Edison had raised the equivalent of $50 million in today's money. He used it to build the infrastructure he'd been planning all along. The first commercial power station at Pearl Street in New York City. The wiring systems to connect buildings. The generators to produce electricity at scale. Within 3 years, Edison's lighting system was illuminating parts of Manhattan, London, Paris, and Berlin. But the patent itself immediately came under attack, and this is where the story transforms from invention to legal warfare. Joseph Swan, a British inventor, had been working on incandescent bulbs since the 1850s. In 1878, a year before Edison's breakthrough, Swan demonstrated a working bulb in England using a carbonized paper filament. Swan's bulb worked. It produced light. It lasted reasonably long, but Swan hadn't commercialized it because he couldn't get good enough vacuums and didn't have Edison's infrastructure vision. When Edison's patent was published, Swan's supporters immediately cried theft. They claimed Edison had simply copied Swan's design and patented it in America. The accusation had merit. Edison had definitely known about Swan's work. The question was whether Edison's improvements were substantial enough to warrant a separate patent. The legal battle lasted years and nearly destroyed both companies. Swan sued Edison in Britain. Edison countersued in America. Both sides spent fortunes on lawyers. Technical experts testified about the subtle differences between Swan's paper filament and Edison's cotton thread filament. The cases threatened to invalidate both patents, which would have thrown the entire light bulb industry into chaos. Any manufacturer could produce bulbs without paying royalties. The solution was pragmatic and brilliant. Edison and Swan merged. Their companies in Britain forming the Edison and Swan United Electric Light Company. In America, Edison maintained control. This wasn't a friendly merger. It was a mutual hostage situation where both sides realized they'd make more money cooperating than fighting. But Swan wasn't Edison's only problem. Remember those 23 previous inventors? They started coming out of the woodwork, claiming Edison had stolen their ideas. William Sawyer and Alban Mann had patented a carbon filament bulb in 1878 and claimed Edison violated their patent. Heinrich Goebel, a German immigrant, claimed he'd invented a working bulb in 1854, 25 years before Edison, using carbonized bamboo in a vacuum bulb. If Goebel's claim was true, Edison's patent was invalid. The U.S. Electric Lighting Company, Edison's biggest competitor, bought Goebel's rights and sued Edison for patent infringement. This wasn't just about money. If Edison lost, his entire business empire would collapse. The Goebel case became one of the most important patent trials in American history. It lasted from 1885 to 1893. 8 years of testimony, thousands of pages of documents, and expert witnesses debating the nature of invention itself. Edison's. Lawyers argued that even if Goebel had created a working bulb in 1854, he'd never patented it, never commercialized it, and never disclosed it publicly, so it couldn't count as prior art. Goebel's lawyers argued that actual invention should matter more than paperwork. The courts sided with Edison, establishing a principle that still governs patent law today. An invention doesn't legally exist until it's properly documented and disclosed. You can't retroactively invalidate a patent with secret prior work. Edison won most of his legal battles, but the constant litigation revealed something important. His patent wasn't as airtight as it seemed. The patent covered a specific design of carbon filament bulb, but it didn't cover all electric lighting. Arc lamps, which used different technology, didn't infringe. Bulbs using metal filaments instead of carbon didn't infringe. As technology improved, competitors found ways to design around Edison's patent. By the 1890s, dozens of companies were producing light bulbs that were technically different enough to avoid infringement but practically identical to consumers. This is why Edison shifted his business strategy from patent protection to infrastructure control. He couldn't monopolize the light bulb itself, but he could monopolize the electrical grid. The real genius of patent US 223898A wasn't the technology it protected, but the industry it created. Before Edison's patent, electric lighting was a theoretical possibility. After the patent, it was an investment opportunity. The patent gave Edison the credibility to raise massive capital, the legal protection to prevent immediate copying, and the time window to build infrastructure that created natural monopolies. Within a decade, Edison's companies controlled electrical supply in most major American cities. The patent itself expired in 1897, but by then Edison's infrastructure monopoly was unbreakable without his permission. He'd used a 17-year patent to create a 50-year competitive advantage. Let's talk about the specific technical details of patent US 223898A because they're fascinating from an engineering perspective. The patent describes a filament with electrical resistance between 75 and 200 ohms. This was critical. Low resistance. Filaments required enormous currents, making long-distance transmission impossible. High-resistance filaments could be powered by manageable currents that could travel through practical wiring. The patent also specifies the vacuum pressure inside the bulb must be less than 1/millionth of normal atmospheric pressure. This required significant advances in vacuum pump technology. Edison's team developed pumps that could achieve vacuums 100 times better than previous designs. The platinum wire connections were sealed into the glass using a borax compound that created an airtight seal while allowing electrical conductivity. The horseshoe filament shape wasn't arbitrary. Edison's team discovered through thousands of experiments that the shape affected heat distribution and longevity. A straight filament developed hotspots at the center that caused premature failure. A coil created uneven current distribution. The horseshoe shape, with its smooth curves and even width, distributed heat uniformly and lasted longer. These seem like minor details, but they were the difference between a 40-hour bulb and a 400-hour bulb. By 1881, Edison's bulbs were lasting 600 hours. By 1890, 1,000 hours. The continuous improvement happened because the basic patent established a platform for optimization. Every improvement built on Edison's original design rather than requiring a completely new approach. The economic impact was staggering. In 1879, artificial lighting in America cost approximately $500 million annually in gas and oil. By 1900, electric lighting provided twice as much light for 1/5 the cost. A gas lamp producing light equivalent to a 25-watt bulb cost $50 per year to operate. An electric bulb producing the same light cost $10 per year. The savings didn't just improve quality of life, it transformed the economy. Factories could operate night shifts. Students from poor families could study after dark. Crime rates dropped in well-lit neighborhoods. Productivity increased by estimates ranging from 15% to 30% in the first decade of electric lighting adoption. Patent US 222388A didn't just protect a light bulb, it enabled an economic revolution. But let's address the elephant in the room, Edison's reputation as a credit-stealing robber baron. How much of the light bulb should we actually attribute to Edison himself versus his employees? The laboratory notebooks from Menlo Park reveal a complex picture. Edison personally conducted many experiments, especially the early filament tests. But the carbonized thread breakthrough came from William Hammer's independent work. The vacuum pump improvements came from Francis Upton's calculations. The generator designs came from Charles Batchelor's mechanical genius. Edison's contribution was partly experimental, partly organizational, and largely strategic. He knew which problems to focus on, which approaches to abandon, and how to combine individual innovations into a complete system. Is that invention? Legally, yes, because Edison held the patents. Morally, it's more complicated. This raises a question that's still relevant today. Who deserves credit for team innovation? Modern patent law says the person who conceives the idea owns it, even if others contribute to development. But in collaborative environments like Edison's laboratory, conception and development are inseparable. Edison's approach was to patent everything in his own name, then compensate employees with salaries but not equity or patent shares. Some employees later claimed they deserved credit. Nikola Tesla famously had a bitter falling out with Edison, partly over credit and compensation issues. Others remained loyal, believing Edison's leadership and vision were the crucial elements that made their individual contributions valuable. There's no simple answer, but it's worth noting that Edison-style corporate R&D labs became the standard model for industrial innovation, suggesting his approach, however ethically ambiguous, was effective. The international dimension of Edison's patent strategy deserves attention. Patent US 223898A only protected Edison in America. In Britain, Swan's earlier work complicated Edison's claims. In continental Europe, both Edison and Swan faced competition from local inventors who claimed independent development. Edison's solution was to create a web of national patents, licensing agreements, and subsidiary companies. In each country, he either patented his design, bought out local competitors, or formed joint ventures. This required enormous capital and legal sophistication. Edison wasn't just an inventor, or even just an entrepreneur. He was building a multinational corporation before the modern concept fully existed. The light bulb patent was his wedge to enter markets, but the real business was electrical infrastructure. The Pearl Street Station in New York, which began operation in September 1882, demonstrated Edison's complete system vision. The station housed 6 coal-fired steam engines driving dynamos that produced 110 volts of direct current. Underground cables distributed power to 59 customers in Lower Manhattan, powering approximately 400 light bulbs. The system was designed with redundancy, safety features, and metering for billing. Edison personally supervised the opening, and legend says he was terrified the system would fail publicly and destroy his credibility. It worked perfectly. Within a year, Pearl Street served 500 customers and 10,000 bulbs. By 1890, Edison's company operated 1,000 power stations, serving 300,000 customers worldwide. The patent gave him the time and credibility to build this infrastructure before competitors could catch up. Edison's monopoly didn't last forever, and the way it crumbled is instructive. The weakness in his system was the insistence on direct current over alternating current. DC power was safe and simple, but couldn't travel more than a few miles from the generator. This meant Edison needed power stations every few miles, making rural electrification impossible. Alternating current, championed by George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla, could travel hundreds of miles using transformers. Edison fought AC adoption viciously, even staging public demonstrations where he electrocuted animals with AC to prove it was dangerous. This became known as the War of Currents, and Edison lost. By 1900, AC was becoming the standard. Edison's DC infrastructure gradually became obsolete, and his electrical companies merged with competitors to form General Electric. The light bulb patent had given Edison a 20-year head start, but it couldn't protect him from superior technology. Let's examine some specific competitors and how they navigated around Edison's patent. The Westinghouse Electric Company, founded in 1886, licensed some of Edison's patents but focused on arc lighting and AC systems that didn't infringe. The U.S. Electric Lighting Company challenged Edison's patents directly in court while developing metal filament bulbs that arguably didn't violate the carbon filament claims. European manufacturers like Siemens and AEG developed their own designs, often improving on Edison's. By the 1890s, tungsten metal filaments were replacing carbon, and Edison's patent became less relevant. The pattern reveals a truth about patents. They provide temporary monopolies, but they also publish your design, allowing competitors to innovate around it. Edison's patent probably reduced his long-term competitive advantage by showing competitors exactly what worked. The social impact extended beyond economics. Electric lighting changed human biology. Before artificial light, people slept an average of 10 hours per night in winter, governed by sunset and sunrise. Electric light decoupled human activity from natural light cycles. By 1920, average sleep duration had dropped to 8 hours. This had profound effects on productivity, culture, and health. Evening entertainment industries exploded. Night schools allowed working adults to get education. The 24-hour city became possible. Whether this was progress or a disruption of natural human rhythms is still debated, but it was undeniably transformative. Edison's patent didn't cause this alone, but it accelerated the transition by decades. The patent also changed how America thought about innovation. Before Edison, inventors were often seen as eccentric craftsmen working in isolation. Edison professionalized invention, making it a systematic, capitalized industry. He showed that innovation could be manufactured through organized R&D, adequate funding, and aggressive patent protection. This model was copied by Bell Labs, General Electric's research division, DuPont, and eventually every major corporation. The modern technology industry, with its R&D departments, patent portfolios, and innovation metrics, descends directly from Edison's Menlo Park laboratory. Patent US 2238988A wasn't just a light bulb patent. It was a blueprint for how to turn invention into industry. One fascinating aspect is how Edison monetized the patent beyond direct manufacturing. He didn't just make and sell light bulbs. He licensed the patent to other manufacturers for fees and royalties. He sold stock in Edison Electric Light Company before producing a single commercial bulb, using the patent as collateral for investor confidence. He used the patent to negotiate favorable terms with suppliers, convincing copper wire manufacturers and glassblowers to offer discounts in exchange for high-volume guaranteed orders. He leveraged the patent to secure real estate deals for power station locations, convincing landlords that electrical lighting would increase property values. The patent was a financial instrument as much as a legal protection for technology. The document itself is preserved in the National Archives and remains one of the most requested historical patents. Researchers studying it noticed several interesting quirks. The handwriting on the original application is meticulous, suggesting Edison or his lawyer understood its importance. The drawings are detailed, showing multiple views and configurations. The language carefully avoids overly specific claims that could be easily designed around, but remains specific enough to be defensible. Reading between the lines, you can see Edison's paranoia about patent challenges. He included multiple dependent claims, fallback positions that would still offer some protection, even if the main claims were invalidated. This defensive drafting proved wise when the lawsuits came. Edison's light bulb patent also influenced patent law itself. The legal battles around patent US 2238988A helped establish several precedents. The concept that incremental improvement can constitute patentable invention, even when building on prior art. The principle that commercial viability and systematic development matter, not just the first rough prototype. The idea that patents should protect methods and systems, not just specific implementations. These principles, forged in Edison's patent wars, still govern how patents work today. Every time a tech company files a patent for an improved method of doing something that already exists, they're following Edison's playbook. Let's consider a counterfactual. What if Edison hadn't patented the light bulb? If he'd kept it as a trade secret or simply started manufacturing without legal protection, would the outcome have been different? Almost certainly. Competitors would have immediately copied his design. Edison wouldn't have been able to raise the massive capital needed for infrastructure because investors wouldn't have had patent protection as security. The electrical industry would have developed more slowly, with dozens of incompatible systems competing. The patent, despite its limitations and controversies, probably accelerated electrification by creating a clear technology leader that could attract investment and coordinate standards. This suggests patents, whatever their flaws, do serve an economic function in certain contexts. The human cost of Edison's success is rarely discussed, but was significant. The Menlo Park laboratory ran grueling hours, with Edison himself famously working days without sleep during intense experimental periods. Several employees suffered health problems from chemical exposure. The competition Edison crushed included inventors who'd spent their life savings on light bulb research and were bankrupted when they couldn't compete with Edison's capitalized operation. The gas lamp industry, employing hundreds of thousands worldwide, was decimated within 2 decades. Joseph Swan, despite his merger with Edison, never achieved the fame or wealth his contributions probably deserved. Progress has costs, and patent US 223,898A's triumph was built on others' failures and sacrifices. Edison's later years provide an interesting coda to the light bulb story. By 1900, he'd largely moved on from lighting to other ventures like motion pictures, batteries, and mining. He'd become wealthy and famous beyond measure, but his electrical companies were no longer his alone. The rise of AC current, championed by his former employee Tesla and competitor Westinghouse, represented a technological defeat. Edison's DC power stations were gradually converted or shut down. The light bulb itself evolved beyond his carbon filament design. Tungsten bulbs, invented in 1904, were brighter, longer lasting, and didn't require Edison's patent. By the time Edison died in 1931, the technology landscape had moved far beyond. Patent US 22223,898A. Yet every electric light in the world owed its existence to the industry Edison had ignited. The patent expired on January 27, 1897, after 17 years of protection. At that point, anyone could legally manufacture bulbs using Edison's design without paying royalties. But by then, Edison's strategic goals had been achieved. His companies controlled infrastructure. His brands dominated the market. His manufacturing processes had economies of scale that new entrants couldn't match. The patent had done its job, providing a temporary monopoly that Edison converted into permanent competitive advantages. This transformation from patent monopoly to infrastructure monopoly to brand monopoly is the real lesson of patent US 223,898A. Today, the patent's legacy surrounds us literally and metaphorically. The billions of light bulbs illuminating the world descend from Edison's design. The electrical grid powering our civilization follows the infrastructure model Edison pioneered. The corporate R&D labs driving innovation use Edison's systematic approach. The patent strategies of modern tech companies, with their complex portfolios and aggressive litigation, echo Edison's tactics. Even the debates about patent trolls, incremental innovation, and credit for team inventions replay arguments from Edison's era. Patent US 223,898A isn't just history. It's the template for how technological innovation, capital, and legal protection interact to create industries. The most profound impact might be cultural. Edison's light bulb became the universal symbol for innovation itself. When cartoonists draw an idea, they draw a light bulb appearing over someone's head. When we describe a moment of insight, we say the light bulb went on. This metaphor isn't accidental. It reflects the light bulb's role as the quintessential invention that changed everything suddenly and visibly. Edison cultivated this mythology deliberately, understanding that fame and cultural impact were as valuable as patents and profits. He gave hundreds of interviews, staged dramatic demonstrations, and encouraged the press to portray him as the lone genius conquering darkness. The reality was more complex, but the myth became self-reinforcing and valuable in its own right. So what's the final verdict on patent US 223,898A? Was Edison an innovative genius who deserved his success, or a shrewd businessman who exploited others' work and gamed the patent system? The honest answer is both. Edison made genuine contributions to light bulb technology, particularly in systematic testing and optimization. But he also built on extensive prior work, employed talented people whose contributions he minimized, and used patents strategically to create monopolies beyond what the technology alone justified. He wasn't the sole inventor of the light bulb, but he was the person who made it a world-changing industry. Whether that deserves 17 years of patent protection is a value judgment, but it's undeniable that the patent system, for better or worse, enabled Edison's approach. The patent teaches us that technological innovation is never just about the technology. It's about capital, timing, infrastructure, legal strategy, marketing, and often luck. Edison's light bulb succeeded not because it was the first or even the best technically, but because Edison understood the complete ecosystem needed for commercial success. The patent was one tool in a larger strategy that included investor relations, public demonstrations, infrastructure development, political lobbying, and aggressive litigation. Modern technology companies learned this lesson well. Today's patents on software methods, user interfaces, and business processes follow Edison's playbook: claim broadly, protect aggressively, and use the patents as financial instruments and competitive weapons, not just technology protection. One question worth pondering: did patent US 2223898A accelerate or delay the development of lighting technology? The acceleration case is clear. It gave Edison the resources and protection to build infrastructure rapidly. But consider the counterfactual. If Edison hadn't had patent protection, multiple competitors would have immediately entered the market, each innovating independently. The patent system channeled most innovation through one company, potentially slowing the diversity of approaches. We'll never know which path would have been faster, but it's not obvious that the patent system was optimal for society even if it was optimal for Edison. This tension between private incentives and public welfare remains central to patent policy debates today. The physical patent document itself is a beautiful piece of history. The careful technical drawings, the precise legal language, the signatures and official seals. Holding it, you hold the legal instrument that transformed civilization. It's worth remembering that behind every world-changing technology is usually a patent document written by lawyers, filed by bureaucrats, and enforced by courts. The romance of invention obscures the mundane reality that legal documents and financial instruments often matter as much as brilliant ideas and careful experiments. Patent US 2233898A is a reminder that innovation is as much about institutions and systems as it is about genius individuals. Looking at the light bulb's evolution, after Edison reveals how quickly patents can become obsolete. Within 20 years, tungsten filaments replaced carbon. Within 50 years, fluorescent lights offered alternatives. Within 130 years, LEDs made incandescent bulbs virtually obsolete. Edison's specific technology is now essentially extinct, used only in specialty applications and vintage reproductions. Yet Edison's business model, his infrastructure approach, and his patent strategies remain influential. The technology was temporary. The business methods were permanent. This suggests that when we study historical patents, we should focus less on the specific technology and more on the strategies and systems that surrounded them. If Edison were alive today, would he succeed in the modern patent environment? It's an interesting thought experiment. The patent system has changed significantly. Software and business method patents allow protecting things Edison couldn't have imagined. But patent trolls and defensive patent portfolios have made the landscape more complex. Edison's aggressive litigation style would fit right in with modern tech patent wars. His systematic R&D approach would work well in today's innovation economy. His ability to attract capital and build infrastructure translates directly to venture capital and platform businesses. Edison was as much venture-backed startup founder as inventor, and his skills would likely transfer to the modern era quite well. The story of patent US 2233890A ultimately isn't about a light bulb. It's about how innovation, capitalism, and law intersect to create change. Edison's genius wasn't primarily technical. It was understanding this intersection better than his contemporaries. He knew that a brilliant invention without capital is worthless. He knew that capital without legal protection is vulnerable. He knew that legal protection without infrastructure is temporary. He knew that infrastructure without public relations is invisible. He orchestrated all these elements simultaneously, using the patent as his conductor's baton. That's why his name endures, while equally talented inventors like Joseph Swan and Heinrich Goebel are footnotes. For anyone interested in innovation, entrepreneurship, or technology history, Patent US 223898A is essential study material. It demonstrates that success requires more than good ideas. It requires strategic thinking, resource mobilization, legal sophistication, timing, persistence, and often ruthlessness. Edison displayed all these qualities for better and worse. He changed the world not by being the best inventor, but by being the best at turning invention into industry. The light bulb patent was his masterpiece not because of its technical merit, but because of how effectively he wielded it as a tool for building an empire that outlasted the patent itself by decades and influenced innovation practices for more than a century. So, when you flip a light switch tonight, remember, you're not just using electricity. You're participating in a system created by a 19th century patent that was equal parts innovation, inspiration, and calculated business strategy. Patent US 222398A didn't give us light, but it gave us the industry that made light ubiquitous and affordable. That's the real power of patents, not protecting ideas, but enabling the systems that transform ideas into reality. And that's why this single piece of paper from 1880 changed the world more profoundly than almost any other document from its era. The patent that lit the world wasn't just about a glowing filament. It was about understanding that darkness is an industry waiting to be disrupted, and that legal protection is the spark that ignites industrial revolutions.